Good evening and welcome to those of you that are already here with us in the event room. We will be getting started right at 7 o'clock tonight, so make yourself comfortable. We'll be starting right at 7 o'clock, and so just give yourself a few minutes to get settled. The best browser to watch this webinar in is Chrome, but if you're active in another, that's totally fine. And there is a refresh signal button at the settings if you should lose your signal, but we will get started here in about 5 minutes. Thank you. Good evening and welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for tonight's webinar. As you enter the room, just letting you know that we will be getting started right at 7 o'clock, so feel free to make yourself comfortable. We will be starting in about 3 minutes. Thank you so much. Good evening and welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for tonight's wellness webinar. We're just getting everything set up here and we will be starting in about 2 minutes. So feel free to make yourself comfortable and we'll get started here right at 7 o'clock. Thank you. All right. Hello and good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for this wellness talk about about the connection between your immune defense and your gut health. Tonight with Dr. Miranda Wiley, we're going to learn the importance of gut bacteria and which probiotic strains are useful for your immune support in adults and children. So I'm just going to see here. Is Dr. Miranda Wiley there? Can you hear me? Wonderful. I can see you, and let's just get your mic turned on here too so that we can hear you. There's the
There we
audio
go.
button there. Wonderful.
Good. Okay. And now next one is the slides.
And yeah, we'll get those slides added.
Perfect.
Did the presentation upload there for you?
It's here on my side. I'm just not sure how to make it like go live. Do I hit start?
Yeah, there should be the
The big green start button.
presentation. Yeah,
Ooh,
there we go.
All right.
We're on.
Okay.
So my name is Haley, and I run our corporate events program here at Nature's Fair Markets. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight, and thank you to Renew Life, who is the partner for tonight's event. Our presentation will be about 45 minutes, and the microphones will remain muted for the duration of the presentation. But throughout the webinar, we definitely do encourage you to submit questions in the Q&A box throughout, and we'll answer them and flag them for Dr. Wiley to answer at the end. A recording of the presentation will be sent by email along with a thank you coupon for your participation. So before I hand it over to Dr. Wiley, I will give you a bit of info on her background. She began her career in the natural health industry at 13 years old, and she was working at a local health food store for the summer. Her initial explorations led her towards a Bachelor of Science in Human Nutrition. She currently practices in Vancouver and is passionate about empowering her patients to improve their health through food and uses whole nutrition as a cornerstone of her medical practice. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight. We're very much looking forward to learning from your expertise.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
I've had a wonderful time in the past coming out to Nature's Fair and doing live talks, and I'm going to miss the Q&A afterwards with kind of the scrum of people all sort of asking things. But this is what we do in 2020. So I'm delighted we're able to transition and be flexible, and I really appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. So I'm going to turn my mic and camera off now and hand it over to you.
And hopefully the presentations, I just click the button and it will
click
go.
Next at the underneath and you'll move to the next slide just like that.
There we go. Awesome. I kind of don't really need to do the slide right now. Haley just told you about me. I'm a naturopathic doctor in Vancouver. It has been more than 30 years in the natural health industry. I'm so grateful that, you know, the local store hired me when I was so young. It completely changed my life. I had been a sick kid in and out of Sick Kids Hospital in Toronto and gradually switched everything over to the natural side and just loved the response and the lack of side effects and the complexity and every patient being unique. There was no one thing that you do for everyone. You want to figure out why. You're always asking why. And that's where I think I got the tag of being a compassionate and curious practitioner. I'm always digging to find out why. You're tired? Why? Well, you have anemia. Okay, well, why do you have anemia? How do we get to the root? I am a whole food cook. I do enjoy, that's my me time in the kitchen. Eternal student. I'm always asking why. I'm not very good at saying I don't know. I can say I don't know yet. Yoga enthusiast for some balance. And I do have two sweet little kids. They're 6 and 2 years old, and I'll be mentioning them once or twice throughout the talk. Today, we're going to be talking about gut health and immunity. I mean, immune health is the topic on everyone's mind and, you know, chatting around the playground, and really to bridge the gut with the immune system. And the gut holds about 70% of our immune system. We're looking at the microbiome. So we're going to discuss what it is, why microbial diversity within our intestines is so important, what factors affect the microbiome so that we can be proactive in making it as healthy as possible. Then we want to talk a bit about immune system, innate immunity versus adaptive immunity. We'll get into some specific probiotic strains that help with immune health. This talk has been sponsored by Renew Life, which is, I think, the leading probiotic company in Canada. So definitely going to be hearkening to a lot of immune strains there, but with science to back it up, where the research shows our information should be coming from. And then there's a lot of talk about probiotics. We're starting to see a little bit more talk about prebiotics, the food that feeds them. But I really also want to just touch on the health of the intestines themselves and a bit on healing intestinal permeability, because I think that's a missing piece for a lot of frustrated people. And once we actually address that, then we get more resolution and some happier results. And then just some good overall lifestyle immune support strategies. The microbiome, arguably one of the most significant discoveries in medicine. It was 200 or so years ago that Louis Pasteur and his colleagues, are looking down a microscope and seeing little cells moving around, tiny things that we can't see, but that are decidedly alive. And that opened up the door to an understanding of health that we'd never had before. Unfortunately, the samples that they looked at tended to be infected samples, right? They're looking at sputum from people who have terrible coughs and urine from people who have bladder pain and, diseased elements, and seeing all these, what they called animalcules, or we now call bacteria or yeast or fungi or microbes, made the association that all of our illnesses are caused by infectious agents. And certainly many of them are. But we host trillions of bacteria and fungi, and that is collectively known as the microbiome. And most of them are incredibly good and incredibly important and essential for our health. So we can draw the analogy of dogs, where a lot of them are, the bulk of them are sweet and lovely and they're great pets and they're loving companions. But occasionally you see some that are not great and they've made the news for doing something terrible and attacking another dog or a human being. Essentially, us human beings, I think, are good people. We're a good species. But we have some bad eggs who, again, make the news for doing terrible things. So likewise, with the bacteria, we are hosting trillions of wonderful species, and they're our allies, and they're working with us, and they love us. We're giving them a nice, steady environment of temperature and food and water, and we're a good host. And then there are those that are going to take advantage and not care about the repercussions. So there are some bad guys for sure. But ultimately, we have a lot of wonderful bacteria living in and on us, and we want to love them back. They are absolutely essential for maintaining our health, and we're still very much at the tip of the iceberg in understanding exactly how and to what level. We do know that they can produce vitamins that we don't have the genes to make. There are some that we have to get from our diet. There are some that we can produce ourselves, but ultimately there are some that they tweak. They might take an element from our food and modify it slightly so that when we absorb it, it's more nutritious or more bioactive, more health-giving. They do also participate along with our digestive juices, our own digestive enzymes, to break down our food to extract nutrients that we need to survive. So good food, good digestive system, you're still not going to get everything out of it without good bacteria there at the interface between the two. And the most fascinating part for me is how they are working with our immune systems. Our immune system, as we will discuss in a few slides, is focused on looking at, okay, what is me? What are my cells? How do I keep me healthy? And yet they are allowing 10,000 species of bacteria to live in the gut and acknowledging that they're not a threat, that we don't need to fight them. We actually have a lot to learn from them. And so that sophisticated conversation going on between these microbes that are beneficial to us and our own body accepting that information and relaying information back, I think there's a whole more world of understanding we need to get there on exactly how they're doing that. But if you do swallow something contaminated with salmonella or, definitely a bad bacteria that causes harm, the first thing it's going to come in contact with is your microbiome. And it will then acknowledge, okay, this is not friend. Let's tell the immune system. And now we can mount up our own immune response. So they're catching the information sooner and then helping to teach us how to respond to it. And they do also produce some helpful anti-inflammatory compounds that can fight off other disease-causing microbes or help to heal up our own internal tissues, as we'll get to when we talk about healing up the intestinal tract. So we need them. We need to love them. The diversity is really important as well. I spent 4 years in my university days tree planting, and then you take this diverse ecosystem, and then it gets clear cut, and then we go in and we plant a monoculture of like just fir trees or just spruce trees. It limits the number of insects that are going to come in. It limits the mammals that are going to come back, the birds that are going to respond. You change the entire ecosystem when you go from all of that diversity down to smaller number of species. And it's the exact same thing with our gut flora. We have microorganisms everywhere. The bulk of them are in our gut, weighing 3 or 4 pounds, depending on our size. So in weight, they're somewhere between our brain and our liver, two very important organs. And all of these microbes added together, weight for weight are pretty similar there. A lot more different types of cells happening. But we also have them on our skin. We have them in our ears, down our entire respiratory tract, in our digestive tract, in our genitourinary systems. And we have different types of bacteria living in different parts of our body based on the environment. How acidic is it? How moist is it? What's in our mouth compared to what's on our skin. The skin microflora do better with drier secretions, fewer secretions rather. And our first exposure to that, of how we go from being sterile little bundle of cells to something that has this diverse rainforest of microbes on us, starts with birth. And so traditionally, historically, ideally, that baby is coming through the vaginal canal and literally getting just like smeared with good microbes from mom. It's going in the ears and the eyes. Some of it's going to be swallowed and go down the digestive tract, but that's our first exposure. Now we are seeing more and more cesarean sections, and that definitely changes the microbial culture. I am not slamming cesareans. Both of my babies were born by cesarean, and I'm so grateful to the hospital for that ability for, to bring babies into the world an alternate way. But it does change their microbial makeup. Babies born by cesarean, a few weeks in, a few months in, when they're tested, their microbial strains tend to be higher in what we generally see on the skin, because that's what they were exposed to. They came out into the world and immediately they're exposed to what's on mom's skin, what's on the doctor's skin, the nurse's skin. We're shedding bacteria all the time. So being really mindful of how and when to support different birth styles and necessities, so that we can really help support gut flora right from day one in a baby's life. As we grow, our gut microbiome begins to diversify. So of all of those microbes that baby was first exposed to in the vaginal canal or in the operating room, some of them are going to stick, and some of them are going to say, yeah, this isn't the right environment for me, and move on. And the ones that stick change the environment slightly. We get exposure to new microbes. Some will stay, some will leave, and we become more and more diverse as we age. There's a reason why babies and toddlers are putting everything in their mouth. They're exposing themselves to different antigens, different microbes, bringing them in and seeing what sticks and what doesn't for their particular chemistry. And generally, the more diversity we have, that's what's considered good for our health, so that everything has its niche, everything has its role. We got that interplay between them all. So we have, again, the gut microbiome controlling the digestion of food, which when we're talking about the gut is a relevant thing to mention. Supporting the immune system, where we house about 70% of our immune cells. And that in turn feeds into our central nervous system, because the same neurotransmitters in our digestive tract are what we find in our brain. So you've got serotonin in the gut, serotonin in the brain, dopamine, GABA, etc. And then more. So it really ricochets throughout the human body. The gut microbiome really is the foundation for health. And it's been estimated, the numbers do keep changing as we learn more, as research gets more specific, but there are more than 10,000 species that live in and on any particular body. And my 10,000 species are different than my mother's 10,000 species, than my husband's, than my child. We all have our own fingerprint of microbes. And there's a number of factors that affect our microbial diversity: the type of birth, as we talked about, our feeding in those first few months. So breast milk contains a particular type of prebiotic that really helps to support the growth of particular cells within the digestive tract. We are now starting to see those compounds. They're called galacto-oligosaccharides. showing up in some formulas. So being mindful, okay, well, when a baby's getting breast milk, it's encouraging the growth of these good bacteria. We want formula-fed babies to have that same benefit. So we're seeing a bit more of that mimicking of bacteria food rather than just, well, here's the vitamin A, here's the zinc, here's the vitamin D that baby needs. Our country of origin, right? I was raised in Canada. My gut flora represents what I ate and what I was exposed to, so much so that if we travel to another country, we can have some gastrointestinal illness when we encounter microbes that are new to us. But the people indigenous to those regions tend to be all right with their particular foods because that's what their gut flora reflects. Our diet, quite simply, if we don't eat it, the microbes can't get it. So if you're having limited amounts of certain fibers in your diet, you're going to be affecting how well those microbes grow. And sometimes we can use that to our advantage. If someone is lactose intolerant because their microbes don't do well with lactose, then they're going to want to avoid that from their diet. Medications, absolutely, that can affect some directly by being antimicrobial, some indirectly. Stress, a lot of the effects that we see on stress having on our immune system or on our digestive tract through the microbes come from how our digestive process changes during stress. When we are relaxed, when we're at rest and digesting, that's when we're releasing the most digestive juices, we're calm, we're able to receive nutrients from our food. If we see a threat, an avalanche coming towards us, a bear, a car in our lane, like something that's super stressful, the body redirects all that blood flow away from the digestive tract so that you can live the moment, you can get through that. If you're about to get eaten by a bear, it doesn't matter if you digest your last meal. So the body will redirect that. So when we're under chronic stress, that's affecting our digestion, which in turn is affecting our microflora, which in turn affects our immune system. Stress also has a very direct effect on our immune system. But right now we're just talking about microbial diversity. Toxicity, so what we're exposed to in our environment, whether you're a firefighter, whether you use clean products to clean your home, all of these elements kind of comes back to our just local environment will determine how well our microflora thrive or fail. And then our age. We see different species in a 1-month-old than we do in an 85-year-old, and it changes progressively throughout our lifespan. Again, but in part due to diet, in part due to medication levels, to stress levels, to just life experiences. But our microbial culture does affect or influence, is influenced by age, changes as we age. So talking about the immune system, so putting all that kind of on one shelf for now, we'll talk about the immune system. We'll marry the two down the road. So our innate versus our adaptive immunity. Our innate immunity is stuff that you were just born with for the sake of being a human being who was born. And it is there to prevent intruders from entering. So a lot of it is quite physical. So your skin, that's stopping microbes from getting at your nice, moist, juicy blood. Tears, constantly rinsing away potential microbes, viral particles from your eyes. Mucus everywhere, digestive tract, respiratory tract. The cilia, and mucus's job, like it's thick, it's gloopy. It is there to like trap debris, to trap bacteria, trap viral particles, fungal spores, and then not allow them to grow and replicate. And then they just kind of get moved out the system through the digestive tract or through our respiratory tree. And that's where we talk about the cilia, which are these long, like finger-like, almost hair-like projections that line our respiratory tract. And they're constantly like sweeping upwards. So it's the ciliary elevator. It's moving everything up. You breathe in a dust particle, a viral particle, it gets trapped by the mucus, and then the cilia bring it up. You clear your throat or coughs, clear your voice in the morning, spit it out, and away you go. Or swallow it down, it gets processed through the digestive tract. If the mucus is particularly thick, or if that cilia is being sort of like numbed or paralyzed or damaged by in any sort of way, that's when we can start having a lot more congestion and we have a harder time clearing out our bronchi. Stomach acid, we need to have an incredibly acidic stomach. When we do, of a pH of like 2 or 3, it burns any microbe that comes in. We're killing it off. It literally is like a fire. When our stomach is nice and acidic, there is a sphincter at the top, so we don't get that backsplash. So we're not talking about any sort of like reflux or heartburn at this point. We want to have a very, very acidic stomach. And in doing so, that's part of our immune system protecting it. Urine flow, we want to make sure we're constantly drinking enough water to keep that downward flow so microbes can't go up. That's also where like sexual hygiene is so important. So urinating before and after sex for women, so to prevent bladder infections. Our friendly bacteria. So again, when we've been talking about these trillions of microbes, pounds of them in our gut, you take in something pathogenic, they should be there to protect us and tell our immune system that something's going wrong, and or even just fight it out and not even let it get to the point of our immune system. But if we're having antibiotics for something necessary, or it's showing up routinely in animal products and dairy and our meats, then we can start upsetting our friendly bacteria. Or if you're fighting a bladder infection and then end up with digestive issues afterwards. So sometimes we need the antibiotics, but we need to be mindful of what it's doing to our good bacteria in the long run and restoring them where necessary. And then our white blood cells. And specifically here, we're talking about two types of white blood cells that I'm going to discuss more on the next slide. So I'll just leave that for now, but some white blood cells for our innate immunity. The adaptive immunity, as the name suggests, it is more adaptive. It's responding to the environment. And here we're talking more about other white blood cells, the B cells and the T cells. So if the pathogen is able to breach the gates and make it through into our most vulnerable parts, that's when our immune system is really going to kick into high gear and support us. So here we have that external, like the barrier, physical barriers, going internal into our immune system, into the immunological cells. That first line that we talked about in the innate, so kind of drawing a line here with innate on that side, adaptive on this side. The phagocytes, these literally means like eating cells. And they're going along and they're going to find that bacteria, don't want this one, this is not part of our friendly microbiome, gobbles it up, like engulfs it, chews it up, and then we'll put out little flags, little souvenirs of, hey, this is what I just took out of the system, this is what I just gobbled up, and that will tell the T cell what to be aware of. Natural killer cells are ones that are floating through our immune system and our bloodstream and going around and looking at, okay, that cell's Miranda, that cell's Miranda, that cell's Miranda, that one is not. It looks like it, but it's not behaving the way I expect it to, because maybe it was infected by a virus, or maybe it didn't replicate right and it's now precancerous. It's going to kill that one off right away. So it's just looking for self, 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 not self, self, not self, and clearing that out. In the adaptive immunity, we have our T cells. These are getting the messages from the phagocytes. They are directly killing things off. And then they're also sending the message on to the B cells. And the B cells are the ones that are producing antibodies. So when you get that kind of swollen feeling when you're starting to get sick, those are your lymph nodes swelling up because they have just become antibody factories. The B cells are pumping out thousands and thousands and thousands of antibodies to float through your immune system, find that bad guy that was identified by the phagocyte and picked up on by the T cell, and essentially just mark it, put spray paint on it, put an ankle belt, something that's, or ankle bracelet, something that's going to say, this is what you need to go fighting. So the antibodies are marking the bad cells so the phagocytes can then go through and kill them off. So we have very layers of complexity to our immune health. And the gut is the foundation of that because 70% of our immune system lives in the gut. And when we say that, what we mean is that along our digestive tracts where we have, digestive juices being secreted and we're absorbing nutrients and we're, processing the food that we've taken in for nourishment, there are patches of cells called lymphoid tissue where a lot of these white blood cells are hanging out so that they are that immediate responsive alert, something's going on. And then that's what's mostly in contact with the microbiome. So we've got a lot of our immune system centered in the gut, the other 30% bronchial tree, genitourinary tract, little bits under the skin, but more diluted here because we have skin as a barrier. Digestive tract, we're very thin, only one cell between us and other. So it has to have most of our defenses lined up there. The enteric nervous system, enteric means digestive, contains 100 million nerve cells that line that GI tract from esophagus to rectum. So like 20, 25 feet in the average person. 100 million nerve cells. It's controlling the motor functions of the digestive tract, the blood flow, digestive juices coming out, mucus being secreted, transport of nutrients, but it's also modulating immune function and endocrine functions. So like blood sugar balancing. And it's this big conversation that's happening between our nervous system and the microbiome. And so that's where we want the microbiome to be healthy, and we want our gut to be healthy, and we want our nerves to be healthy, and everything feeds in. This is the foundation of holistic medicine. It all talks to each other. So probiotics. Now we're going to get into like, so what do I do? How do I help? I got to eat well, and I've got to, be mindful of my environment and maybe not be so toxic and clean up what's around. Probiotics, they literally mean for probio life. So they are things that are there to help support our life. When we want to choose one, we want to keep a couple things in mind. It's a big category when you go to the health food store. So things help you choose, well, which one do I need? Culture count. Sometimes we just need a few billion that are going to be our maintenance dose. Everything's fine. We eat a good diet. Our stress is under control. We just want to make sure, kind of just top it up so that it's as perfect as it can be. Sometimes we do have digestive issues, or we are under intense amounts of stress, or we've just come off antibiotics that were necessary to fight whatever infection was happening in the body, and you need a higher count. So be mindful of the culture count as to where you're at and what you're looking for. Multiple strains. I'm always looking for diversity. We want to support the rainforest, not just grow a monoculture again. So I'm always looking for how many different types are on the label. The delivery system for a new life, most of them, the stomach acid is supposed to kill off bacteria. So they put them in capsules that are called DR caps, which have been third-party tested in humans, which is really nice, not just an animal test. Third-party tested in humans to ensure that it withstands stomach acid, because we want to have an acidic environment. We don't want to dilute that. To that end, though, I do suggest taking probiotics with food, because you have that very acidic stomach, you've brought in your not so acidic food, and that's naturally going to raise the pH to be less acidic, which will then help more of the bacteria to survive and make it through. So the DR caps are absolutely great, but taking with food will just enhance that survival and minimize the effect of stomach acid that much more. Targeted formulas, that's where we're going to spend the bulk of the next sort of 5-10 minutes. Storage, historically probiotics were always refrigerated because they're living, and putting them in refrigeration just makes them live more slowly. And so they're going to live longer and therefore be available to us when we take them into our system. That's inconvenient for some people. I have so many patients who just, I always forget to take my probiotic. It's in the fridge and all my other ones are in my pill pack. So more and more research going into how to produce shelf-stable probiotics. And so we're going to talk about those ones as well. Ultimately, whatever it takes to get it into you. If you're remembering to take them out of the fridge, stay with that. That's great. If you travel a lot or you need to have it in your pill pack that you use every day, then go for shelf-stable. Otherwise, there's no distinction. And then potency at the time of expiration. All of our New Life probiotics undergo a rigorous testing program to ensure that at the end of this particular supplement's life, that is when you're hitting that 50 billion, 25 billion, 100 billion, whatever it may be. So if you buy it months sooner, you should be getting even more bang for your buck and a higher dose. 3 key strains that we're going to talk about, and this is where it gets a little bit nerdy, which I enjoy, and I hope I can make it fun for you and not so nerdy, but we want to look at specific strains. So it's one thing to say, okay, bacteria, it's all the dogs, and then each individual strain, okay, well, that one's a Chihuahua, that one's a Wolfhound, that one's a Golden Retriever. All dogs have the same species. They are all the same species, but they look so different. They act so different. They all have different qualities. Same things with these microbes. Then we want to get into, well, is it a golden lab or a chocolate lab or a black lab? We can get a lot more specific with how things have been bred and how they have diversified. And so we'll see that with bacteria. So Bifidobacterium bifidum, big category, but the particular strain, that one type called R0071, is the one that has been shown in a study that I'll walk you through to reduce the incidence of cold-like symptoms in stressed out adults. Does that sound relevant? Bifidobacterium animalis subspecies lactis UABLA-12. So again, we're getting very nerdy, very, very specific. This one has been clinically studied to support respiratory health in children ages 3 to 12. Not that it isn't beneficial for adults or children outside of that age. That was just the age that was in the study. And then Streptococcus salivarius K12. This was clinically shown to reduce the frequency of both streptococcal, so strep throat, which is a bacteria, and viral infections in children who have a history of recurrent oral streptococcal diseases. So the problem is, you know, most of us have the streptococci bacteria in our throat. It's part of our flora. Viruses get in there, they cause the infection, weaken the system, and then the bacteria are like opportunistic. Hey, look at that. I've got some exposed flesh. I'm going to go in there and start gobbling up those nutrients and causing a broader infection. So you want to get something, you know, the antibiotics will get rid of the streptococcus, but you still have that viral infection that was, you know, weakened the tissue in the first place that gave the strep its edge to get the strep throat. Here we go. So bifidobacterium bifidum R0071 results in a greater proportion of well days and a lower percentage of academically stressed adults. So they took about 200 people and put them into 4 groups. One group got a placebo, poor them. One group was given Lactobacillus helveticus. We didn't see enough of a change there, so it's not going to get mentioned. Bifidobacterium R0071. So we're going to just focus on these 2 yellow boxes. And for these people, so just under 100 people in these 2 particular groups, it was a 6-week study, and every day they had to look at 9 different cold and flu symptoms and rate their severity from 0 to 3. So every day I have a sore throat, 0, I have a cough, 2, whatever it may be. They're rating that every day. And they found that the people in this group who took the bifidobacterium bifidum R0071 had fewer episodes of flu, about 2/3 the episodes of cold and flu-like symptoms. So instead of having it up to 63, they had only up to 43, whereas with this group, 61, like that's not much of a change. The duration of the cold was 1.8 days as opposed to 2.4 days. And this improved with every consecutive week. So this is just the total for that 6-week chunk. But over time, it was even better. So at week 5 and 6, their response was even better than at week 1 and 2. So daily intake of bifidobacteria provides a benefit related to cold and flu outcomes during acute stress. So they use students. Students are a good barometer of stress. So here we look at the ultimate flora probiotic plus immune support. So we're still getting some good strains. We've got 5 different strains, 30 billion live bacterial cultures. So it's got a nice blend. It's pretty robust, but we're specifically looking here at the bifidobacterium bifidum R0071, 3 billion of those, because that was shown to help reduce the incidence of cold-like symptoms in stressed adults. The other 4 strains are there to just do overall immune support, gastrointestinal support, digestive health, and just, you know, keep our microbiome as healthy as possible. And this one, no gluten, no artificial color, no binders, non-GMO. Everything with Renew Life is non-GMO, and no artificial color, no binders. I believe no gluten as well. Some have dairy. This one is not one of them, I think. Don't quote me on that. I will double check. But all gluten-free, which is important to me. I don't eat gluten. Okay. The Ultimate Flora Critical Care. Here we have 2 options, one that's refrigerated, one that's shelf stable. So this is just your daily multi-strain probiotic. This is the one to have as like your your prevention. 50 billion, nice amount, take one every day. You're getting that delayed release, that DR capsule for the targeted delivery into the small intestine and into the large intestine. And again, yeah, so no gluten, artificial color fillers, or non-GMO. In the shelf stable, there's also no dairy or soy. There's trace amounts of dairy and soy in the refrigerated one. That's where I knew it. And all of them, as I said, non-GMO and no gluten. Now we want to look at kids. I've got a 6-year-old. He just spent 2 days home from school. We tested. We're both negative. It's all good. But still, it's 2 days home from school when he'd much rather be hanging out with his friends. So here they took, it was 60 children. 3 of them were given the placebo, which was just maltodextrin. So essentially like a long chain sugar that doesn't do much. And the other 30 were given a combination of Lactobacillus acidophilus DDS-1, so one particular type of Lactobacillus acidophilus, and they were given Bifidobacterium lactis UABLA-12 in a dose. They had 5 billion with some fructooligosaccharides. So this is a starch that helps to feed microbes. And at the end of the study, short-term use of the probiotics didn't reduce how often the kids got sick, but it did shorten the duration of the symptoms. And this is it. Kids with their immune systems, they need to get sick, get the illness, build the antibodies, get those B cells and T cells ready for the next time, and get on with it. Get back to school, get back to playing. So they're going to get sick. It's what kids do. It's part of their immune system development. We want to shorten the frequency, the intensity, and the duration. And that's what these probiotics were shown to do. This is where we get the kids' daily boost. This is in like a little sachet of like fruit punch flavor. You can shake it directly into the mouth. My daughter likes that. My son doesn't. He gets his mixed in applesauce. Therefore, he thinks it's delicious. So it's however you can get it into the child. Mix it in a smoothie. But yeah, a lot of them just like it straight under the tongue. Here we are just focusing really on those 2 strains that were shown to help support immune health. It will support digestive health as well, predominantly through supporting the microbiome and possibly helping with diarrhea, constipation. But really the target here, getting that respiratory health, getting that immune system, get the cold, get your antibodies, get back to school and have fun with your friends. This one we're looking at Streptococcus salivarius K12, and this is very specific for the kids who are getting strep throat repeatedly. So if they're not, if it's just, your average cold, snotty, runny nose, then I would stick with the daily boost. But for the kids who are getting strep throat, this one is the more effective choice. So they took 61 children with a diagnosis of recurrent oral streptococcal disorders. They kept getting the swab positive for strep throat. And then they were treated for 90 days, so 3 months, with this particular bacteria, this S. salivarius K12, and then the other 30 were the untreated control group. After that 90-day trial, we saw a decrease in the reduction of their symptoms compared to their previous year of greater than 90%. In the control group, there was no change. So 90% better from the year before versus no change from the year before. It's a pretty wonderful conclusion. So considerable reduction in both in episodes of both streptococcal and viral infections, reduced the number of days under antibiotic and or antipyretic, that means fever reducing therapy, and days of absence from school or work. This is your kid's throat defense. This one is orange flavored. It's a tablet. It's shelf stable, and occasionally I throw into my son's lunchbox along with his various whole food nutrient gummies to keep him strong. So you are still getting that gut flora support, but really targeting upper respiratory tract and those kids who are prone to strep throat. Journal of Pediatrics did a study in neonatal intensive care units across North America. So we call it the NICU. And they administered a probiotic mixture, this probiotic mixture, to infants who were born less than 32 weeks gestation. Near and dear to my heart, my son was a cesarean. He was also born at 26 weeks gestation. So big on probiotics for the teeny tiny babies, or the healthy term babies, or the vaginally born breastfed babies. We all, I think, need a bit of support to our microbiome. So they gave the children this particular probiotic, and their target there was reducing something called necrotizing enterocolitis, which is an awful disease where essentially their bowels just self-destruct, necrotizing. It's the cells die, and generally they'll need surgical repair. It's awful. We avoided it in my son. Lots of people were able to avoid it through the use of this product, the FLORA baby. So there was a reduction in necrotizing enterocolitis. There was a decrease in death, although it wasn't deemed significant, but there was a significant reduction in the combined outcome of death or NEC. So it's readily available. You'll find it in, this one does absolutely need to be kept in the fridge. There's a little scoop in there. Yeah, so good for the babies. So clinically studied multi-strain blend of probiotics specifically formulated for newborns or preterm children, 5 strains, mostly bifido. And bifido is what we want to see both in the very young and in the very old. So there's only 1 lactobacillus strain in there. Otherwise, it's all bifido strains. It's just a particular type of bacteria, a subset of bacteria. And that's really what we want to help develop a healthy intestinal tract. The lactobacilli will come down the road as our microbiome diversifies. And it's flavorless powder. They won't even know they're taking it. But really want to talk quickly about supporting the digestive tract itself. We want to bring in all those good flora. We want to, make sure we're having, the right strains that are around. But the analogy I'll use with patients, if you got really good quality grass seed or flower seeds or whatever, and you throw it on concrete, or it's not going to grow. We want to make sure that the soil is good, that the cells themselves are healthy so that they can better support the growth of these friendly flora, and the friendly flora can better help support the tissues themselves. This is where we really want to have that reciprocal relationship. And a lot of people are aware of the microbiome. They've been taking probiotics, and they're still a bit stuck in their digestive symptoms or in their immune health. And I think this is the next level. Our gut barrier, our digestive tissue, as I said, we're one cell thick at this point, outside, inside, other, personal. One cell, we want it to be a good, strong wall. So our intestinal cells are supposed to be tightly knit against each other, no breaks or gaps. As we digest food, they can then pass through the individual cells. We'll see these healthy, tight junctions here. There's nothing in, no spaces in between. And then anything that wants to be absorbed. So here we've got pathogens. I don't like that. Let's pretend this is a nutrient. It's going to go directly through that cell and make it into the blood flow. So it'd be nice if this is like a vitamin A or a carbohydrate. These look pretty darned. So we want to get those through the cells into that bloodstream. When there's inflammation, think of any time you've sprained your ankle, the cells get red and hot and they start to move apart. And then we've got gaps and bigger particles. So in this case, microbes or undigested particles of food, anything that should be staying on the outside of the barrier can now float across and make it through into the bloodstream where it can mount an immune response. So we have these antigens that can be transported across the epithelium, and that will initiate the immune response. Then we have inflammation begetting more inflammation, and it can be a tough spiral to break out of. So we really want to support nice, strong junctions between all of our immune cells. They're snugged up shoulder to shoulder with the one beside them, and nothing can get through that isn't allowed to get through and come directly through the cell itself. And that's where intestine U comes in. This has 5,000 milligrams of L-glutamine. This is the amino acid that our cells like the most, our gut cells like the most. Our brain only wants sugar, will not eat a fat, not interested in eating an amino acid. Our muscles are a bit more flexible. They'll kind of eat whatever's on the buffet. Our digestive cells, the cells lining our digestive tract, they like glutamine. That is their preferred fuel. So 5,000 milligrams is going to help them to grow and strengthen themselves. N-acetylglucosamine, wonderful for knitting up those junctions. My point that I want to make here, though, it does often come from shellfish. So if you have a shellfish allergy, this is not a product for you, unfortunately. So apart from that shellfish issue, N-acetylglucosamine, also called NAG, wonderful for healing things up. And then we've got some lovely healing herbs, soothing, like putting aloe on a sunburn, just easing that inflammation, calming things down. So intestine U, it's a powder. It's something I really think needs to be discussed more when we're talking about gut health and therefore immune health. No direct impact on immune system that I can think of or see directly, but by healing the gut, we're supporting our immune function. So let's summarize the lifestyle things. Yes, I think we should all be taking probiotics. We don't eat fermented foods the way our ancestors did. And we need to sleep as much as we can. We're going into winter right now, and I find a lot of patients, I need to give them permission to sleep more. If we didn't have electricity and we were dependent on candles and wood and burning fuels to get light and warmth, we would go to bed earlier because those things were expensive and they were, limited commodities, and we would sleep. So it's darker for now for like 12 hours. Sleep more. If you want to sleep more, sleep more. We need sleep. If it's a problem for you, then speak to someone who can help you get better quality sleep, but sleep is so essential. Minimizing sugar. When our blood sugar goes up, our white blood cell count goes down. So it's that simple. When we're having glucose, other simple carbohydrates, that can reduce phagocytosis. Remember those big cells that just chew up anything foreign? That can suppress that for at least 5 hours after consumption. We don't want that. We want these cells, they're hungry for food where they're not going to be, in a sugar coma because we give it to them. So really, really minimizing sugar. We need treats, I think, in our life. Just, have that minimally sweet thing at the end of a meal that's full of protein, fat, and complex carbohydrates and fiber. Then that sugar will have less of an impact. It's a bigger deal if you're having a lollipop in the afternoon when it's just pure sugar going into your bloodstream. A high quality, lower glycemic, best quality you can afford at the end of a meal, much easier on your digestive tract, much easier on your sugar balance. Prebiotics. If we don't eat it, they don't eat it. We want to support good, healthy flora, good microbiome. That means that we need to have a very diverse diet with different types of fibers coming into it. So we really want to support the microbial composition, help it to be as diverse as possible. If all you like are carrots and broccoli, you're going to be feeding, one particular type of bacteria. The more you can bring in different types of fibers into your diet, the more you'll be feeding a range of microbes in your system. Probiotics, absolutely. We need them, and there are some that are very specific for what we might be trying to achieve. They interact with our immune cells. They help to support our T helper cell balance. Also can directly fight pathogenic organisms. So every day we want to be taking a probiotic, whether it's for your digestion, whether it's for your immune system, or whether it's just for overall systemic balance, like a good multi. And then finally, stress reduction. And this is, I think, one of the trickiest ones in a stressful time. Short-term stress can boost the immune system. Like you're in that, okay, I got to get through this. When it's chronic, then we really start playing with how well our immune system works. Our mood ties into how well our gut works. Our gut ties into how well our mood is feeling. So stress will raise cortisol, which in turn lowers white blood cell counts. It can cause us to engage in bad behaviors, maybe a little more chocolate, maybe a little bit more wine. Maybe not going to sleep as much, going to binge on whatever show I'm watching. It can lead to bad behaviors that then affect our health down the road. So whatever we can do to counteract that. Meditation, it's free. It's available on so many apps or YouTube videos, or just taking the time to be quiet, getting out for a walk in nature, you're distancing, breathing fresh air, moving your body. Exercise is fantastic for reducing stress. Whatever it takes, talking to loved ones, which is hard right now, but use the technology that's available. But yeah, it's I think one of the toughest elements to what we're in right now in our global situation. The immune system is there. A lot of people are dealing with higher stress levels, be it financial or loneliness, whatever it may be. So we got to find ways to support each other through that. Support our moods. Mood is big. And thank you. That was hopefully not too geeky, but geeky enough that it gave you something, some new information. And I am now open to any questions that might have come through during the last 45 minutes.
Hey, Hi. That was fantastic. Thank you so much. Lots of good takeaways. It might even be helpful to keep that final slide of the 5 categories up while we have some questions. So I'm going to say I'll categorize them: a little bit of lifestyle, a little bit of product questions, and then we can address what people have been asking. If you still have a question on your mind, feel free to put it into the chat and we'll do our best to get to it once I've gone through the questions throughout the talk. I'd say a few times it came up to folks that are asking, is there one you can recommend that from a probiotic that would be vegan or vegetarian?
Oh my goodness, I kind of feel like they are veggie caps. Then when we're looking at the vegan or vegetarian, oftentimes the question comes back to what the microbe was originally grown on. So like Lactobacillus bulgaricus came from a Balkan yogurt. However, it tends to be grown on non-dairy substrates now. So the shelf-stable ones guarantee that they are dairy-free and soy-free, both shelf-stable and refrigerated or gluten-free. So I think if you're vegan, you're looking for any of the shelf-stable ones, because that cuts out all the dairy and makes sure there's no dairy particles.
Okay, great. Yeah. There was a question about
the
gluten, wheat, dairy,
soy,
and soy
some
intolerances.
Soy in the
Jennifer did answer that.
So if you're soy intolerant, you're going for shelf stable.
So she said shelf stable, ultimate critical care, 5 billion. It's soy free, it's dairy free. Yeah. Okay, great. And with the probiotics, is it something that you would be taking indefinitely, or is it something that you can build on as you're going through this time of stress, and then
we think about how we're shedding skin
time.
cells, we're shedding hair, our digestive lining, it turns over, it has the fastest turnover of anything in our system, partly because fiber is going along and kind of scraping it up. and partly just because it is staying new and fresh. So when we have cells that are constantly sloughing and moving along, and they're holding, like that's what the microbiome has been sticking onto, and we're sloughing, moving it along, it's going to be part of our stool. Then we have new, fresh baby cells coming up. They need new bacteria to come and hold on to them. So that turnover is about 48 hours. If we're trying to, stretch things out, then I'd say a probiotic every other day at a minimum would be fine, just to make sure that always when you're putting out new cells, there are microbes there able to connect and interact with them. They are going to be replicating themselves to some degree, but to really keep those levels bolstered. And it's also looking at diet. I mean, some of my patients are adamant and diligent with their raw sauerkraut, raw kimchi's, yogurts, like being really mindful of getting fermented foods every day. And other people are like, yeah, I have it sometimes when I think about it. And it's a nice, have a condiment once a week. Or yogurt, generally it isn't strong enough. It's a bit of a can be a bit of a maintenance dose, but they don't post their levels on it, and we just don't know. So I think be really mindful of your fermented foods, but I think it's for what you get from a probiotic, it's like in my core 4.
Yeah, awesome. And on the food source note, do you have some favorites that people can kind of keep in the rotation of their diet to feed into that good gut health?
Yeah, I mean, there's more and more companies coming out with it. Just make sure you're going for the refrigerator section for sort of the sauerkraut kimchi lines or the fermented like beets or whatever is happening out there. When it's on the grocery aisle shelf, so when it's in the middle of the store, it has been heat treated in order to stay stable in a glass jar. So this is one where you do want to be shopping the refrigerator section. And then I think the category is expanding every time I go in the grocery store.
Oh, for sure. In our stores, you'll find like in the cooler section where the grab and go kombucha is, right next to it now, it's a big section of all sorts of sauerkrauts and kimchis and
tons. And some of them are caraway and some are plain.
Yeah. How do folks achieve that healthy acidic stomach? Like, is it drinking water with a slice of lemon?
That's a start. Stress reduction is a big one. When we're stressed, our body is not prioritizing digestion, so we're not going to secrete stomach acid to that same degree. So this whole culture of like, I'll eat while I'm powering through my emails and doing stuff. It is hard, and this is a hard one for me to practice what I preach too. But sit at the table, turn off all distractions, be mindful with your food. The first stage of digestion actually occurs in our brain. So it's when we hear it sizzling, we smell it cooking, we're anticipating it coming, we're building up that appetite, knowing that food is going to arrive. The brain then gets everything going. So it's like, all right, let's start emptying out the digestive tract. Let's get the stomach juices flowing. Let's get the liver pumping out bile. Everything starts moving along. And then we want to chew carefully, chew well, be mindful of what we're eating. And that in turn will help to support the stomach acid. Certainly before a meal, having some digestive bitters is a nice way. That bitter reflex on the tongue stimulates the flow of gastric juices. And you can find a lot of those in a nice tincture form. If you're going to do the lemon, I always try to include the rind. So you want to do organic where possible and get the rind in there because the rind is bitter. The juice is sour, but it's not low enough to hit a -2 or 3 pH. Same with apple cider vinegar. It's a nudge, but it's not going to drop it as low as your own hydrochloric acid coming out of your stomach cells. So just being as mindful, reducing stress, take digestive bitters.
Okay, wonderful. A few folks have asked about either being on antibiotics and recently coming off of them. Recommendations in regards to you using probiotics to support, and how long does it take to really build up your gut health back to what it was before you were on the antibiotics?
Yeah, I mean, it depends whether you did, a single dose antibiotic or a week of antibiotics versus if you're on it for like 6 weeks or something longer, or if it's a recurrent thing where you get strep throat all the time, you're on antibiotics, like, it's like a week every 2 months I'm on this one. So it also depends how depleted your gut flora is. You'll know you're there when you're having the perfect poops. So when you're back to like the daily shaped like a banana, half sink, half swim, medium brown, easy to pass, very little to wipe, you're there and you can start sort of pulling back. But digestion will tell you when it's at a good level.
Perfect. A couple questions about the intestine product.
Yeah.
There was one. How often would you take that?
You take it daily. It depends also how damaged and depleted I think that person's gut is.
Yeah, someone said they have gastritis, and if it would be appropriate to
it
use
would.
it
The
for
crane's
that.
bill, the marshmallow, there are some nice soothing herbs in there to help like just reduce that inflammation, soothe that down. We also want to look at, again, back to my original, why? Why do you have gastritis? Is you taking ibuprofen every day, or is there a bacterial infection? So we want to get to the why, but in order to help heal it, the intestine would be helpful. Some people might need to cycle it, like do it for a month and then come off it for a month or two and then go back on it for a month and like really just try and work things down and see if they can wean off. Working with someone, tuning into your digestion. I don't have one answer that's going to fit everybody out there.
Yeah, absolutely. A few questions around probiotics and dementia. If there's probiotic strains that, if it helps with that, if there's evidence around aiding.
I don't know, but I'm going to say I don't know yet, because now that's a fascinating question. I'm going to into it. Definitely with mood disorders. So when the immune system is firing and it's drawing in other immune systems, it sends out chemicals. I kind of think of them as like little emails. They're called cytokine, they're messengers. Interleukin 6 increases inflammation, draws immune cells in, but it also makes us depressed. So that's when we're like, oh no, I'm getting sick. Interleukin 1 gets that inflammation going, but it makes us anxious. Oh no, I can't get sick now. Not now. This isn't the right time. So we have that interplay between what's working in our system, pro-inflammatory, anti-inflammatory, working on our mind. So that's where the stress to gut, that's a direct pathway. Gut to brain is another direct pathway. So dementia, I do not know. Mood disorders, absolutely, there are connections.
Okay, thank you.
But I'll be looking into the dementia one. So next time someone asks me, I'm going to have an answer.
Yeah. If someone has celiac disease, it's under control, but they often feel bloated and pain in their stomach. Should they start with intestine first and then introduce probiotics, or can you kind of layer them on top of each other?
Absolutely do both at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
yeah,
great.
2 different targets. And
in response to you saying a probiotic is in your core 4, someone asked, what are your
the other
core
ones?
4?
Yeah. That's got to come. Fish oil, or even like a vegan fish oil, but those essential fats, we can't get enough EPA and DHA from diet alone. So eat all the sardines and salmon you want. I still think that one has to be supplemented. A good overall multi, I have so many nutrients that I could then do a big argument on. So like vitamin D is up there, zinc, vitamin C, like I just want more nutrients in general for everyone. So a multi is a good way of getting all that, which I think would then include magnesium. Why am I drawing a gap on this? I'm visualizing my cupboard right now.
Yeah.
So open up the fridge.
That seems like a pretty solid top 4.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Magnesium, nutrients in general, the probiotic, and the fish oil. And then there's me one more as soon as we hang up. I'm going to be like, oh, of course, this one. In my fridge, it's the probiotics, it's the fish oil. Up in my cupboard, that's where I've got like a wall of things.
Yeah. Yeah. With the probiotics, do you need to take a prebiotic in order for that to work in your body?
Depends on your diet. If you're eating, a well varied diet with lots of different fibers coming in, then probably not. If you're eating, Fruit Loops for breakfast and Starbucks muffin at lunch and instant pasta, it all depends on your diet.
Okay.
So in which case we should really talk about your diet while taking the probiotics with the prebiotics. But yeah, we got to have, if you're getting a lot of fiber in your diet, you might not need to take one with a prebiotic in there.
Yeah. Okay. And once the product's opened, if it's a refrigerated one, how long do they normally last for in the fridge?
You got me. I don't know. I'm sure it says on the box.
It would probably say an expiration date on the box.
Yeah, it's not on the top of my head right now. Sorry, I will know that one.
Jennifer, do you know that one? She's still there. And that, I think, covers most of the questions that we've had and got time for. We're getting close to 8 o'clock, so I don't want to keep you much longer.
Okay. Yeah, it's 7:59. I'm still trying to think of that other 4. I'm like, I have my core 4. I've got...
Yeah. And the probiotics, she does note that they do have a best before date on the box.
Yes.
So
Yeah. They'll definitely, and that's when we have that final expiration. But once it's opened, there might be an additional date there as well. Certainly for fish
okay.
oils, we see that. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Well,
Awesome.
thank you again so much for your time tonight. And again, to anyone that is watching, the presentation recording will be sent out tomorrow morning, along with the coupon. And thank you to Renew Life for partnering with us on this event. And this is our last webinar of the year. So
wow.
Capping it off with a good one, and everybody stay healthy and have a really wonderful winter.
Awesome. Thanks everyone for joining us. I know we're hitting computer fatigue. I really appreciate your time.
Good night.
Awesome. Bye, Haley. Bye.